Hello, folks. This is Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
It's the tornado Tim Dunnihill.
And Psychic Tom Padgett pulling the cover off my crystal ball.
Uh-oh.
All right. Well, a little bit behind the eight ball. I actually forgot we had a show tonight until my girlfriend reminded me. A half hour ago, I had a lot of shit going on. Been just kind of piecing through the stuff here, and fascinating stuff I'm finding. Full military record. Every single orders that he received, every piece of paperwork. I mean, this guy saved everything. So, I mean, I've been kind of putting it this way: it's a blessing and a curse. But it's a book in this. There's really a book in this guy's life, and you know, I knew some of the stories. I got some of them revealed during his lifetime, but this is like the ultimate, because there was a point where I had dug into some of this stuff about 10 years ago in the garage, and he literally pulled me aside, and he goes, "Stay the fuck out of my garage." So, like, all his stuff from his police days are in there, all his diaries and surveillance reports and pictures. And, I mean, at the funeral, the woman that we grew up with who works at the Boston Globe started looking over my shoulder at some of the stuff, and next thing you know, we're all looking through it, and then one of his partners comes over, who was a cop with him, and he starts telling me stories, and it's like then he starts translating some of the notes and the pieces of paperwork that I brought, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, Emily and me getting together, this is a book. She's already got publishers. So it's just a matter of organizing it, which is the hardest part. Some of it is, neatly packaged, but the rest of it is all over the place. But I did manage to piece together just about every document from Vietnam, and some of it surprises me. Like, he had one guy he picked up for stealing a projector in Vietnam, and he interviewed him and said, how you doing this and all this, and started asking him questions, and then the dude was so eager to tell his story, he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're doing this threefold than you think we are. This is like 3 times as big operation as you think it is. We're doing this at like 4 different bases, and we're getting all this equipment," this kid says. So, I mean, little things like that is just priceless. Letters that he wrote to people and stuff like that. Just unbelievable amount of stuff that just look at, and you're just like, wow, I never knew this about him. Some of the, controversies and scandals that he dealt with as a cop, it's all there. And a lot of it is in his own words. And he was very cryptic. Like, he didn't like to write in complete sentences. There's amazingly, he loved Trump so much, but he was the first one to use the word witch hunt in a situation that before Trump even came along. He had used the word witch hunt to describe one of the situations he was going through. So, it's just crazy amounts of stuff. And there was the original citation, because you got the Bronze Star in Vietnam. Even though he didn't really see a shitload of combat, he did a lot behind the scenes to make sure combat went smoothly for some of these guys in Special Forces. Right. So he actually revolutionized the way the military did video, according to his Bronze Star application, or his citation. And he had one of the most advanced technical briefing rooms in the whole country of Vietnam during the war that he created and he had constructed. So, smart guy. I mean, it's no wonder why I'm always trying to get involved in 9 different things. Because he was involved in so many different things. Electrical stuff was one of his passions when he was younger, not so much when he was older, but he was big with electrical stuff. And every story people tell me, especially some of the cop stories, like when he was undercover, just makes me think of shit I went through when I was investigating the Fertitas, because I've got a story to match it from my own career without even ever having heard that original story. So yeah, it's just been a crazy experience. Crazy stuff. But anyway, got a big show, got a lot to talk about. I'm going to start off with some of the stories from the week that I saved. We had a big one. They're trying to say that the boxing versus MMA debate is dead now, which is what they've been saying about boxing for years. We know that's not true. But it's all because Artem Lobov managed to pull it off. He beat up Paulie Malignaggi pretty good, got a unanimous decision win. And they're saying that puts the rivalry to bed. What do you guys think?
Watch it. I did hear a couple of feedbacks on it, obviously from Paulie himself, who felt that he did not get a just decision out of this. Like I said, I can't speak on it. I know a few other people said they thought that Paulie did the better boxing on there. He may have broken his hand again, which for a guy with chronic broken hand, bare knuckle boxing is probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
But like I said, I can't speak on it in expertise, but like I said, you can definitely see that both guys were marked up.
Yeah, and actually there was some complaints from Artem about the referee stopping the clinch because, it was kind of like the referee favored the boxing more than the actual rules of bare knuckle fighting where you can actually clinch and hit. They call it dirty boxing in MMA. But, the referee apparently, I didn't see it either, but the referee basically never allowed it to continue there. He just kept breaking them up, and Artem was very upset about that at the end. But they had basically mutual respect for each other at the end. They were classy about that, even though Paulie was pretty vicious, saying that he wanted to really hurt the dude before this fight even started. So there's that. And Henry Cejudo is in the news. He wants a fight with boxing world champion Vasily Lomachenko. Probably the odds are very unlikely that happens. Even if the UFC does acquire a boxing outlet. It's just, I don't understand why these fighters, you're in a different discipline, and you think you could just walk into a boxing ring against the best guy in your division. It's like, start small, dudes. We have to see what you can do on the other side before you take on the champion. Just because you're a champion, like I could be a champion in lumberjacking, but I'm not going to go try to go up against a champion in an accounting office because he'll fucking kill me in accounting. I don't know shit about finances, but taxes. So yeah, different story.
What's funny is because we were talking about it last night. My dad and I, he came to the LA Fitness. We were working out, doing little boxing, little pad work. We hadn't done it in a while, so we were definitely rusty. And it just by chance happened to be that one kind of guy there that I've been telling you about. And my dad, he's like, I watched this guy for 30 plus minutes in the same space and with gloves on and just do real slow, awkward, like upper body movement. Like he threw no punches. It was real slow, it was real awkward, and he would just like move his head like real on his upper body real slow, but with no, real, I don't want to say purpose, but no real definition to it. Like a lot of times you'll see a guy shadow box, and I'll admit I do it myself, where you're taught when you're shadow boxing, you're throwing your punches, but also you imagine that there's somebody in there with you. And so sometimes if you're watching me shadow box and I throw like 1-2, you'll see me roll under the hook that's not coming, because in my mind one is, and I'm training myself, for realism there. This guy does the same thing for 30 plus minutes where he just rolls his upper body. He's the same guy that stood in front of a heavy bag for 45 minutes. I would single punch.
Right.
So he told me one time, the only time I ever spoke to him, he's like, he goes, I'm thinking about turning pro. And he goes, I was watching the cruiserweight title fight this weekend, and they weren't that good. I can beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching him shadow boxing. I'm like, this guy's going to trip over his own feet, and he's going to fall through the glass door because he's stepping the wrong way, and he's, off balance. And I'm like, buddy, you wouldn't last a round with one of my trainees.
Mm-hmm.
That includes Amy. You know, all 110 pounds of her. And, you know, it's definitely a big difference. Like, you know, I could put him in a sparring match with my trainee, Matt. Matt hasn't worked with me in a while because of shoulder injury, or a back injury. Amy has a shoulder injury. But I could put him in there with Matt, and Matt would eat him alive in under a minute. Matt's never had a fight, amateur, you know, nor professional. He'd eat this kid for breakfast because he has learned how to, you know, do some real boxing, throw some real punches. We've worked the pads together. You know, trust me, I know what it was like when I was 13, 14 years old and my friends would get the pads and we thought we knew what we were doing. We didn't. And I found out the hard way when I had my first sparring session against a freaking boxer. Same thing here. Like, this guy might have some experience, but you're jumping right in there with the creme de la creme when you're talking about a guy like Lomachenko, and he's going to, you know, take your lunch money and bitch slap you.
Yeah. So, so Henry Cejudo, too, had to pull off a miracle in his last fight, so I hate it when guys like that have a difficult fight and then start calling out everybody. It's like, you know, you didn't look so hot your last time out in the cage, buddy. You need to focus on that game. You know, not that I'll ever put down an effort like
now,
that.
Rich, I haven't read this article. Is Henry saying he wants to box Lomo?
Yeah. Yep. How do you think that's going to work out with your crystal ball, Tom?
Well, this is not.
Yeah.
As I said, it's the ball's just kind of looking at me and smiling like, you got to ask me? Really?
It's one of the balls looking at you saying, you need help with this one?
Exactly.
All right. Well,
you know, and there's some arrogance about that. Like, I'm going to jump over all the other contenders. You know, I mean, come on. Yeah, you want to fight Lomo? Lace the gloves up, start your 4-rounders, and work your way up. And that takes years.
Well, you know what? And I think a lot of it has to do now with McGregor jumping over and getting that big, multi-million-dollar fight with Mayweather. And hey, McGregor was an established star in UFC, and he was brash, he was cocky, and he was such a good salesman that he was able to sell people on this that he really had a chance to win. He didn't. But now, you know, now a lot of people are talking about like crossovers. It's like, well, if McGregor can jump right in there and get a you know, mega fight with a guy like Mayweather, why do I got to toil, work my way up the ranks? I should just be able to step right in and do the same thing. On the other hand, you had a guy like James Toney. You know, James Toney, one of the few boxers that really threw his hands in mixed martial arts with no success. You know, I mean, basically, he was like, you know, because of his name, he jumped in there, and I think, was it Randy Couture that he fought?
Yeah.
And it massacred in under a round. But he was stepping right into a big fight because of his notoriety. Same thing with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar stepped right in there with Frank Mir's debut fight. You know, there was no moving his way up. It was like, you're taking on, you know, a top guy. And the fight, he was pounding him until he got caught with that, what was it, the ankle hook or the heel hook?
That was a knee bar.
Yeah, knee bar. I know it was on the lower half of the body.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, James Toney had the answer the phone defense, but it didn't work when he got choked out.
Yeah.
Somebody told him that. Answer the phone. You got to put your hand up by your ear and stick your elbow out. So that's all he did. That was a rough one to watch because I had been convinced that James Toney was going to take this. It's going to be a fight.
Well, you know, and if you go back and if you listen to my prediction on that one, I said James Toney has the worst type of style to compete in mixed martial arts because he would be a very low output counterpuncher.
Right.
So James, if you watched him, especially in his later years, as he got heavier up to heavyweight and he would box, he would go against the ropes a lot. he would sit his ass basically on the ropes, roll behind his shoulders, and throw counter punches. I said, but he wasn't throwing a lot of punches around. He wasn't high activity. And now it's like, for a boxer to beat a mixed martial arts fighter who's expert in takedowns and grappling and working on the mat, you cannot let them get close to you. You need to actually have a striking offense on your feet. Once it gets to the mat, you're done. You know, because your defense, that you're a specialist in boxing, is not going to work on the mat. And as soon as he let Couture get close to him, you know, he had, you know, no answer for that.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway. And James Toney really went out of his way to get that fight too, because you know he's just a confident character, but didn't really back it up in the cage when he got there. But yeah, they gave it to him. They gave him a chance, and they gave him one of the biggest paychecks that any first-time fighter in the UFC probably ever got. I think it was like some ridiculous amount, like $400,000. That was nuts. And then Randy Couture ended up being in a big contract dispute with the UFC. Long story short, Mark Cuban was involved. He wanted to get him to fight for HDNet Fights. And Mark Cuban, at that time, actually was following my lawsuit. He told me himself. He emailed me directly.
Wow.
It's one of the coolest things about my case, because I literally asked him questions and he answered them. About the UFC's sponsorship arrangement where they owned their own sponsor. And he told me, well, that happens all the time, but the problem with what they're doing is if it's against their covenants, their loan covenants. If they're violating their loan covenants, then that's a big deal. That's like fraud. So he said, but otherwise, that fucking owning your own sponsor shit happens every day in the business world. So I was like, wow, shooting it straight. And then he said, I've been following your case. And I was like, and I had never even watched Shark Tank or anything at that point. I don't even know if it was around. But, yeah, now I look back and it's like, you know, the Donald Trump interview, the question I got. It's like, wow. Geez, I've gotten to interview some big people over the years. You know, at least exchange information with them and pick their brain in that case. But, yeah, and speaking of that case, this is a perfect segue. Station Casinos, that it's owned by the Fertittas right now, even though it's a public company. They still have majority ownership. They're in a little bit of trouble with the unions, and now it's coming back to bite them in the ass because of the Democratic Congress. And they've given to Republican causes their whole lives, and the unions are typically Democratic. So Station Casinos, they're in the news in Vegas. They're refusing to bargain with the union employees at Palms Casinos, and it's apparently holding up a huge tax break for the company. And the tax break is connected to the resort's $690 million remodel. And this is one of the things that I talked to the guy from Financial Times about when he called me a few weeks ago and talked to me for 10 minutes. That they're doing the same shit that they did when they bankrupted the casinos. They're just blowing up the prices for remodels and renovations and expansion, and they're not thinking about long term, like where's the money coming from to pay for all this. So they did this at a time when they just made the company public, and they're now their stock is starting to lose sentiment in the marketplace because people are realizing it's all happening again. But anyway, under the bill passed by Congress in 2017, the company would have been able to write down this big, huge remodeling effort, but now there's a glitch in the law that spreads this tax break over decades instead of giving it to the company immediately. And according to the Huffington Post, the fix for that glitch is being stalled by some members of Congress. And 14 Democrats sent a letter to the owners of Station Casinos urging them to bargain with the culinary union. The lawmakers want the casino company to work with the union before they fix the tax law problem. So workers this all stems from an incident where workers at the Palms voted last year to join the union, and then the company decided not to negotiate with them. Instead, they're fighting the effort in federal court. And the Federal Labor Board has already said the company's breaking the law by not bargaining. And the Culinary Union says supporters of Palms and Green Valley Ranch workers are gearing up to picket Station Casino's partners nationwide. And I'm familiar with the way the Culinary Union operates. It's a good thing that the UFC isn't connected to the Fertittas anymore, because they used to use that as a weapon to go against them. They used to attack the UFC and how they say they need a union, but obviously they wouldn't step up and create one for the UFC because they were too worried about their own union. And it was one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way about their efforts. But now that the UFC is not involved and they're not pretending to be a union for them, I kind of am cheering these guys on, because it's just proving my point that even when the government steps in and tells them they need to do something, these guys are bucking the system and trying to save money by not dealing with these unions. And even if you don't agree with unions, when the vote is taken, there's not much you can do. Like, you, as a corporate company, you're kind of stupid to stand up and say no and fight that. Like, there's been a vote, so I mean, I don't know enough about unions because I haven't been in one ever, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's a craze, especially out west. It's getting more and more liberal in California, and Vegas is probably going to swing that way pretty soon. But the unions have always been at the Fertittas' throats, and they've actually taken some of my leads on some of my stories and used it on their website. So it's just interesting that this is actually a national story now, that they've got a tax break situation they need to worry about. But you heard it here. We also have a couple events coming up this weekend, and we had Bellator 223 last weekend, big fight in the main event there. But last weekend on ESPN Plus, we had Renato Moicano losing to the Korean stun gun Chan Sung Young by TKO 58 seconds into the first round in the main event. The co-main event, Brian Barberena went down against Randy Brown. I'm a poet and didn't know it. Oh, you guys back? I lost you there for a second. I was saying Brian Barberena went down to Randy Brown in the third round, 2 minutes and 54 seconds in. It was a KO, knockout, TKO. Then bantamweights, Andre Ewell getting a unanimous decision over Anderson Dos Santos. And a unanimous decision for Andrea Lee over Montana De La Rosa. And Kevin Holland over Alessio Di Chirico. And then John Lineker over Rob Font was canceled for some reason. I won't go through the whole card, but for Bellator last week, we had a big upset in the main event, I guess. If you didn't know much about Lovato, like I said, I didn't last week, but I knew a lot about Gegard Mousasi, and he lost a majority decision to Lovato Jr. Went all 5 rounds, so, and it was another fight I missed. It was in London, so I'm sure there was a time difference. And then we had a co-main event also, and in decision for Melvin Manhoff over Kent Kauppinen. And the Aaron Chalmers back in the win column with a win over Fred Freeman by triangle choke submission, 4 minutes and 5 seconds into round 2. Then we had Paul Daly beating Eric Silva by unanimous decision, so he's back looking good. James Gallagher over Jeremiah Libiano by unanimous decision. And Fabian Edwards over Jonathan Bosuku, also by UD. And then we had Oliver Enkamp beating Walter Gahadza by rear naked choke. And that was 4 minutes and 54 seconds into round 1. So there's 6 ticks on the clock. James Gallagher, I already said that one. Denise Kiel-Holtz in the female fight in the early card over Brioni Tyrell. That was by TKO from punches. 2 minutes and 48 seconds into the third. Then we had Costello Van Steenis, TK over Mike Shipman. That was in the second round, 1 minute and 34 seconds in. We had Charlie Ward over Justin Moore, knockout, TKO from punches. Second round, 3 minutes and 23 seconds in. Then we had Charlie Leary over Chris Bungard by unanimous decision. Kate Jackson over Lena Ovchinnikova by doctor stoppage, 4 minutes and 21 seconds into the fight. Terry Brazier over Alessandro Bocci by submission key lock. That was in the third round, 2 minutes and 17 seconds in. And then Luke Ord over Nathan Rose by UD, and Alfie Davis over Josima Jose de Paz by unanimous decision. And we'll go through the rest of the little ones. And then this weekend we have UFC on ESPN 3. Free fight. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that one. Main event there is Francis Ngannou against Junior Dos Santos, the big boys. Got 13-3 for Ngannou, and 21-5 for Dos Santos. Both of these guys are a little unpredictable. We don't know which one's going to show up, but Junior always comes to fight, always is very aggressive, and has very little concern for defense a lot, so leaves himself out open to a knockout here if Ngannou can put all his skills together. But sometimes he's been a dud, so you never know which Ngannou's going to show up.
Yeah, exactly, but this is a stylistic nightmare for Junior.
Yeah. He's one of the older ones, too, in the UFC. One of the guys who's been around the longest and taken the most punishment. So, Ngannou just being a little bit fresher might be the difference. You never know. And we have Joseph Benavidez in action. He is 27-5, fighting Jussier Formiga, who is 23-5. It seems like a great matchup on paper. And we got Demian Maia, who is the human backpack, I call him. He is 26-9, fighting Anthony Rocco Martin, who's 16-4. And Demian Maia, he's one of those guys in wrestling we used to call, somebody who likes to put the legs in. Just wraps his legs around you whenever you can, and then tries to put a body lock on you, or hold on to you, and then figure out a way to get that rear naked choke on you. And any kind of submission, he will submit you any way he can if he gets a hold of you. So, and that worked. It worked. He was making quite the title run until he ran into a couple people who figured it out and stopped him. But Anthony Rocco Martin is the one who has to figure it out now. He's 16-4. So we'll see what he has. Demian is 26-9. Roosevelt Roberts, undefeated at 8-0, is in action against Vince Pichel, who is 11-2. And then Drew Dober, 20-9, fighting Marco Polo Reyes, who is 8-5. Alonzo Menafield, also on the card, undefeated at 8-0, fighting Paul Craig, who's 11-3. And then we got, sounds like a Native American name, Journey Newson. He is 7-1, fighting Ricardo Ramos, who is 12-2. Eric Anders, 11-4, fighting Vinicius Moreira, who is 9-2. Jordan Griffin, 17-6, fighting Vince Murdoch, who is 10-5. Jared Gordon, 14-3, fighting Dan Murray, who is 13-5. And I'm going to do my best with this one. Dolce Lungiambula. He is 9-1, fighting Dequan Townsend, who is 18-7. And we got a female fight. Emily Whitmire, 4-2, fighting Amanda Rebos, who is 6-1. First fight of the night is Maurice Green, 7-2, fighting Junior Albini, who is 14-5. And then we go to boxing here. So last week we had a big fight on Sunday. Jermel Charlo beating Jorge Cota pretty easily on that card. Also,
this fight originally was supposed to be but unfortunately, his opponent, who beat him by a very close unanimous decision a few months ago, Harrison, pulled out of the fight with an injured ankle a couple weeks ago, so they brought Kota in as a late replacement. And I'll say this: I like Jay Nady. I think he's a very good referee. He keeps control in there. He's got a level head. The only thing, and I've said this his whole career, and if you go back and watch a lot of his fights that he's refereed, if there is a situation where a fighter is hurt, or if a guy is hit and Jay is stopping the fight, he'll run and he'll jump in between and he'll throw this big dramatic arm wave, just like a umpire calling the guy safe Game 7 of the World Series 9th inning. To really get the dramatic flair. Unfortunately, and I have a couple instances that always stick out in my mind. One was the Kostya Zab Judah fight back in 2001, where Zhu landed that straight right hand. Judah went down. He fell back down and he got up and he's wobbling across the ring. And Nady stepped in and stopped the fight, which I thought was an appropriate stoppage because of the way Judah was wobbling. But instead of securing the fighter, he just did the big dramatic arm wave. And I was like, okay. The other one that I remember was Tito Trinidad and Fernando Vargas back in 2000. And the same thing. Trinidad broke through and it was back and forth fight. Trinidad finally took over, dropped Vargas twice in the 12. He hits him again. Vargas is going down, and Nady jumps and does the big dramatic arm wave while Vargas is hitting the canvas instead of helping break his fall. So going back to this fight, obviously Charles is the favorite fighter, the substitute. The guy was very tough. He came in win. He didn't, come in to lie down. Well, in the third round, Charlo catches him with a straight right hand, almost in like hooking motion a little bit. He arcs it over, kept him right on the chin. Kota goes down hard against the ropes. When he got up, you could see him wobbling, and he actually turned his back almost and walked into the ropes. And when Nady asked him if he's okay to continue, Kota was actually holding the ropes with his left hand. At no point did Nady say, hey, step to me, walk forward, put your hands up. And unfortunately, I thought this was a mistake in judgment because Kota was not prepared to fight. He was not okay to continue. And Charlo hit him with a straight right hand. And this poor young man hit the ground. His head bounced off the canvas. He was lying under the ropes. His arms were almost flapping. And, that was one where I had to question Jay's judgment on that one, which I don't like to do.
Right. Well, shit happens. We have a big lineup for this weekend too, but there was some other fights worth mentioning over last weekend as well. Guillermo Rigondeaux got a big win over Julio Ceja on Sunday as well. Yasmin. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tony.
No, it was a tough fight, and he broke through with an impressive stoppage.
Cool. Also, Sergio Garcia had another win over Siarhe Rabchanka. No other big names on Saturday. But Friday, our boy Tony Luis got the big win over Adrian Estrella, former guest of ours, Tony. The other Tony. Another Tony, I should say. There's just so many of them up there. And then we got Jamal coming up this weekend. We got the Charlo brothers like to fight usually on the same card, but now they're fighting on different weekends.
Yeah, usually on the same card.
So Jamal is going up against Brandon Adams on the 29th here. That's tomorrow, Saturday. And actually, I've got Saturday up on Box Trek, so we'll get to that. That's a big fight. But we're going to go through the whole list
I was gonna do the Jesus fight first, but Jesus is the guy's middle name. I don't think that counts.
Well,
There's a fight in Niagara Falls worth mentioning. Welterweights in the main event. Castillo Clayton, undefeated at 16-0, fighting Johan Perez, who's 24-5-2, for the vacant NABA welterweight title and the vacant WBO international welterweight title there. Nothing crazy on the undercard. It's a fight in Fiji. It might be the mismatch of the week. We've got Abhay Chand. He's 23-15-4, fighting Tamu Gaunavu, who is 4-2, for the vacant Fijian super middleweight title. I don't suppose there's too many fighters in Fiji to pick from.
Actually, it's funny. More than you would think, because Dr. Cox used to go down to Fiji and actually do boxing seminars down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, here's one. Main event in Mexico. Guy's name is Emilian Richard. 7-0, fighting Adin Gamboa. And Adin Gamboa is 4-26. And he's not the only one who's 4-26 on the card. Yikes. Mismatches all day. Quintana Roo, Mexico. We actually got some decent fights. Main event, Omar Chavez, 38-5-1, fighting Oziel Santoyo, 10-1-1. Let's see. There's the big ones.